Imagine standing on a road, looking out your car window and seeing clouds beneath you. Not beside you, below you. You are driving across a bridge so high that the river underneath is 625 meters down. That's twice the height of the Eiffel Tower, nearly 9 times higher than the Golden Gate Bridge. If you dropped a coin off the edge, it would fall for over 10 seconds before hitting the water. This is the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge in China. It opened in September 2025, and the moment it did, it shattered the record for the tallest bridge on Earth. And here's the wild part. The record it broke belonged to China too. Just 100 kilometers up the very same river stood the previous champion, opened back in 2016. China didn't beat some rival country, it beat itself. But the real story isn't how high it is, it's how anyone managed to build it across a canyon so deep, the Chinese call it the crack in the earth. Here's how they did it. Now watch why they built it here in the first place. Guizhou, a province in southwest China, one of the poorest, most rugged corners of the country. The land here is a nightmare. It's carved up by deep canyons and jagged limestone mountains. For centuries, that terrain trapped people in poverty. 2 villages could sit on opposite sides of a gorge, close enough to shout across. But to actually reach each other, you'd drive 2 hours down a twisting mountain road, along the canyon, and back up the other side. Roads prone to rock falls, roads that flooded. So China makes a decision. Stop going around the canyon, stop going down into it. Just throw a road straight across the top, from cliff to cliff. On paper, madness, but it would connect a forgotten region to the rest of the country in a single stroke.
But how to connect the 2 ends of a chasm when there's more than a kilometer of empty space between them, and a raging river below? On paper, the idea was insane.
Here's the core engineering problem. The canyon they had to cross is enormous, not just deep, but wide. The 2 cliff edges are well over a kilometer apart. You cannot put support pillars down in a gorge that's 600 meters deep with a river raging at the bottom. There's nothing to stand them on, so the entire road deck, the whole span, has to hang in the air, held up by nothing but cables stretched between 2 towers on either rim. And it has to survive fierce canyon winds that scream through that gap every single day. Now the numbers. The bridge stretches nearly 2,900 meters from end to end. The main span alone, the gap hanging between the 2 towers, is 1,420 meters. That's the longest span of any bridge like this ever built in the mountains. The deck floats 625 meters above the water, and to hold it up, they raised 2 colossal towers on the cliffs, one of them 262 meters tall, a skyscraper in its own right, perched on the edge of a cliff. On paper, madness. All they had to do was build it. So, step 1, the towers. Before anything can hang in the air, you need 2 anchor points strong enough to take the strain. 2 towers rise on opposite rims of the canyon, hundreds of meters tall. These aren't just decoration. Every ounce of the bridge's weight, plus the pull of the wind, plus the traffic, funnels down through these towers into the bedrock of the cliffs. They are the shoulders that carry the entire structure. And they have to be poured and raised on the edge of a sheer 600-meter drop. And the ground itself fights back. This whole region is karst, soft limestone riddled with hidden caves and underground rivers. While digging a tunnel to anchor the bridge, the crew suddenly breaks into a flow of groundwater gushing out of the rock.
Imagine the shock of the builders when tons of groundwater gushed out of the rock. Any other project would have required pumping, but the engineers acted much more intelligently.
On most projects, that's a disaster you pump out and dump. But here the engineers do something smarter. They channel that water into a brand new reservoir built right at the bridgehead. A problem the mountain threw at them turned into a water supply.
Nothing wasted. Next comes the hardest question of all. How do you string a cable across a canyon this wide, with a lethal drop in between? You can't just carry it across. There's nothing to walk on. Here's the trick, and it's the same brilliant idea used on the great suspension bridges. First, you get a single thin line across the gap. Then you use that line to pull a slightly thicker one, and a thicker one after that. Cable by cable, you build up the two massive main cables that will carry everything. And these cables are monsters. Each one is spun from around 40,000 individual steel wires. And this isn't ordinary steel. It's a new ultra-high-strength wire, engineered to take more than 4 times the strain of standard cable. The whole bridge hangs from these two woven ropes of super steel. Now the deck, the actual road you drive on. And here's where it gets clever. The road isn't poured in place in the sky. It's built on the ground somewhere else, in pieces. The deck is a giant steel truss, a skeleton of triangles, incredibly strong and surprisingly light, cut into dozens of separate sections, 93 of them. Together they weigh around 22,000 tons. But the canyon is so rocky and remote that you can't even truck these huge sections in whole. So they're taken apart into smaller modules, hauled to the site, and reassembled at the canyon edge like a giant kit. Then comes the part that looks impossible. How do you lift a 22,000-ton road up and hang it under cables, hundreds of meters over a canyon? The answer is one of the largest cable cranes on the planet. Picture a zip line strung across the entire gorge, between the two towers.
Here, at a mind-boggling height, one of the largest cable cranes on the planet comes into play. Each multi-ton section of the road is carried through the air over this abyss.
Each heavy steel section is hooked on, lifted off the cliff, and carried out over the abyss, dangling in midair. Then it's lowered into exact position and connected to the cables above.
Piece by piece, the road builds itself out into empty space, meeting in the middle over the river. Workers do this standing on narrow catwalks slung along the main cables, welding steel while suspended over a 600-meter drop. But here's a hidden problem. When you're assembling a bridge in mid-air, section by section, how do you make sure both halves line up perfectly and meet exactly in the center? A few centimeters off, and the two sides won't connect. The solution is in space. The crews used China's own network of navigation satellites to track the position of every part in real time, down to tiny margins. Satellites in orbit guiding steel into place at the bottom of a canyon. That's how precise this had to be. And through all of this, there's an invisible enemy: wind. Down in open air, 600 meters up, a canyon acts like a funnel. It squeezes and accelerates the wind into powerful gusting blasts that hit the bridge from the side. A long flat deck hanging in that wind is in danger of catching the gusts and starting to sway, a motion that can build on itself until it tears a bridge apart. This has destroyed bridges before, so the engineers shaped and tested the deck specifically to let that wind slip past instead of grabbing hold. Taming the canyon wind was such a challenge that the project earned 21 separate patents for the new techniques they had to invent. By early 2025, the two halves of the deck reach out and meet in the middle. The bridge is closed, but before a single car is allowed on, it faces a brutal test. They drive 96 fully loaded trucks onto the span at once, more than 3,000 tons of weight, all at the same time, to see how the bridge behaves under punishment far beyond normal traffic.
96 loaded trucks, weighing over 3,000 tons, simultaneously enter the suspended section, testing the strength of super steel.
Sensors buried in the cables measure every tiny movement. The bridge holds. It passes. Only then is it safe to open. And even now, the bridge never stops watching itself.
Threaded inside the cables are fiber optic sensors, nerves made of light. They feel the strain in the steel every second and report the bridge's health in real time. If anything ever shifts or weakens, engineers know instantly. a bridge that can sense its own body, 600 meters over a canyon. On September 28, 2025, the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge opens to traffic. And it does it in record time. The whole thing, from first work to finished bridge, took only about 3 years and 8 months. Think about that. A record-breaking bridge across the deepest canyon, built faster than many countries build a stretch of subway. The moment it opens, that 2-hour white-knuckle drive down and around the canyon becomes a 2-minute cruise straight across the top. Now here's what makes this bridge special, beyond the record. This isn't a rich city showing off. Guizhou is one of China's poorest provinces. And yet it has quietly become the bridge capital of the world. This single province has built more than 30,000 bridges. It holds nearly half of the 100 tallest bridges on the entire planet. People here call it a bridge museum. Each of these bridges does the same thing. It takes a village that was cut off by a canyon and plugs it into the modern world. Roads mean trade. Trade means jobs. And a 2-minute crossing means a kid can get to school, and a farmer can get crops to market, in a place where that was once nearly impossible. And they didn't stop at just a road. They turned the record itself into an attraction. There's a glass elevator that rockets tourists up one of the towers to a cafe perched around 800 meters above the river.
This record is more than just a number. From a remote and once impoverished province, this place is transforming into the world capital of extreme tourism.
There's a glass walkway for those brave enough to look straight down. Bungee jumping into the crack in the earth. A remote, poor canyon is being reborn as an extreme sports and tourism magnet, all because of the bridge stretched across it. Here's the bottom line. To cross the crack in the earth, engineers couldn't go around it or down into it. So they hung 1.5 kilometers of road in thin air from cables of super steel, lifted into place by a crane the size of the canyon and guided by satellites. Every part of it was called impossible for a reason. Deep canyon, brutal wind, remote, rocky terrain. They solved all of it, and did it in under 4 years. They didn't conquer the canyon by filling it in. They simply stepped over it, cable by cable, section by section. But a bridge over a canyon is one thing. What about building up instead, 0.5 kilometer into the sky, where the wind alone can tear a tower apart, or out into the open sea, on ground that doesn't even exist yet? That's next time. If you love watching humans take on nature and win, subscribe. This is the kind of story we break down here. See you at the next impossible structure.